you have read about the skull. In the osteology, we have already taught you what is skull, basic boundaries, what is vertex, what is bregma, that has been taught to you. Yes? नहीं क्लास थी नहीं तो पता कैसे होगा ना. So for the this boundaries of the scalp, what is actually scalp is a soft tissue that is covering the skull cap. So for this, you must be knowing what are the bony attachments of the soft tissue. But as you all have not attended the osteology class, so you should know that in this skull cap, this is the bregma. These are superciliary arches. So if we talk about the boundaries of the scalp, it is anteriorly superciliary arches. Superciliary arches, and they are found in the frontal bone. So above the eyebrow area, these are the superciliary branches. बातें बंद करोगे नहीं तो ये टॉपिक तुम खुद पढ़ोगे. Then posteriorly, hope you all know there is a protuberance on the occipital bone that is called as external occipital protuberance. If you have not seen, today you can go to the DH and see these these regions features in the skull cap. And from there are the lines which are called as superior nuchal lines on the occipital bone. So occipital bone lies laterally or posteriorly? Posteriorly. Then laterally there is a area that is zygomatic arch. Here is the soft tissue covered, so you cannot see the zygomatic arch, but it is lying over here. So anterior, the boundaries of the scalp is superciliary arches of the frontal bone, posteriorly external occipital protuberance, and from there laterally rises the superior nuchal lines. And onto the lateral side, inferiorly, there is attachment to the zygomatic arch. Then coming to the layers of the scalp. The spelling of the scalp is S-C-A-L-P. Similarly, they have been named accordingly. That is, S is for skin, C for the connective tissue underneath the skin. Then there is an aponeurotic layer which is related to the muscle occipitofrontalis. Then again there is a loose connective tissue. So two times there is a connective tissue present over here. First is C and then is L. But first one, C, is dense connective tissue. It is fibrous, inelastic in nature. Then L is a loose connective tissue. So both of these layers, they have their specific clinical importance. If it is dense, fibrous, inelastic, what clinical conditions it can arise from here? And if it is loose, why the other conditions can arise, like black eye. Then comes the pericranium. So what is pericranium? Any bone is covered with all bones in the body, they are covered with a layer which is called as periosteum. So here in the cranium we call it pericranium. Hope these names of these layers are clear to you. Yes? S-C-A-L-P. So don't forget the names of these layers. S starts with the skin, C with the dense connective tissue, A aponeurotic layer, L loose connective tissue, and the P pericranium. Boundaries I am repeating again. You will repeat with me. Anteriorly it is attached to the posteriorly and laterally to the, from external occipital protuberance to the laterally center in the posteriorly, in the center it is external occipital protuberance, and from there the lateral lines are there that are called as the superior nuchal lines. The external occipital protuberance and the superior nuchal lines, they are posterior attachment for the scalp, and laterally it is attached to the zygomatic arch. Now coming to the layers one by one. So if we talk about the first layer, skin. So everybody has seen and everybody has hairs on it. Yes? So if hairs are there, then there are the glands that are related to it. What are the name of the gland? Sebaceous glands. So how do you see them histologically? Sebaceous glands, they are seen like a bunch of grapes in histology near the hair follicle. So at the hair root you can see the bunch of grapes, which is the sebaceous glands. So if sebaceous glands, they are numerous in scalp, so there is a clinical condition which is called as sebaceous cyst. So sebaceous cysts, they can arise on the scalp in the first layer, last row, stand up and get out. So it is a common site for the sebaceous cyst. Dense connective tissue, the second layer, which is also called as epicranial. This connects the skin to the epicranial aponeurosis. Third layer is your aponeurosis. So this layer, dense connective tissue, is a link between the skin and the third layer, the epicranial aponeurosis. Now this dense connective tissue, as I said, it has fibrous inelastic tissue. Secondly, the blood vessels. It has got rich blood supply and it has got rich nerve supply. So lot of arteries and lot of nerves are over here. So clinically, if the blood vessels they get torn, if there is injury, it will profusely bleed. Why? Because the tissue around the blood vessel, it is fibrous, inelastic, so it is not able to contract back. तो अगर fibrous inelastic tissue होगा, muscular tissue नहीं होगा surrounding में, so it cannot contract back, so there is a profuse bleeding during the injury of the scalp. Secondly, if there is any inflammation, like we talk about the sebaceous cyst, so if there is any inflammation, it will cause lot of pain. Why lot of pain? Again, because the tissue is inelastic over here, so it will cause pain and swelling. Then it's rich blood supply. One positive point of this rich blood supply is that this region heals faster. If that wound gaping is covered or stitched, it is being stitched, then this, because of this rich blood supply, the scalp will get healed faster. Next, coming to the third layer. So first layer is skin, second is dense connective tissue, third we are talking about the epicranial aponeurosis. So aponeurosis is always related to a muscle. So here the muscle is occipitofrontalis. So there are two bellies of occipitofrontalis muscle, occipital belly and the frontal belly. So those fibers which are frontal belly of occipitofrontalis, they are lying anteriorly, right? And these are this occipital belly, it is lying posteriorly. So what is the action of this occipitofrontalis muscle? So before coming to the action, okay, first this aponeurotic layer, it joins the two bellies, that is the frontal belly and the posterior occipital belly is joined by the flat aponeurosis, that is called as epicranial aponeurosis, which is running from anterior to the posterior region, and it is also known as glaya aponeurotica. What it is known as? Glaya aponeurotica. So if we talk about the actions of the occipitofrontalis, so can you move the scalp? Can you cause wrinkle on your forehead? Yes. Can you raise your eyebrows? So it is because of the action of the occipitofrontalis muscle. Then what is the innervation? The two muscles, bellies, they are lying anteriorly and posteriorly. So their nerve supply is also different. The motor branches of the seventh nerve, that is temporal branches of the seventh nerve कौन सी होती है? Abduction, auditory, बोलो, वेगस, फिर बताओ कौन सी होती है? पीछे से कोई आवाज ही नहीं आ रही है. वापस मोबाइल खोल के बैठ गए सब. सेवन क्रेनियल नर्व इज, तुम्हें पता है, मुझे मालूम है. रेस्ट ऑफ यू, सेवन क्रेनियल नर्व कौन सी होती है बेटा? तुम लोगों को पता है, बोल नहीं सकते हो या पता ही नहीं है? रोल नंबर 50 है, एब्सेंट है. रोल नंबर 50, 53, पेपर देना. 57, क्रेनियल नर्व के नाम बताओ. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . Olfactory, shabash. Anybody wants to correct him? ये facial nerve नहीं पता है तुम लोगों को? Seriously, you don't know that seventh cranial nerve is facial nerve? रोल नंबर 7, cranial nerves के नाम बताओ. मैम हिस्टो का वाई खराब हुआ था. प्लीज टेक योर सीट. नहीं पता ना? जो 12th तक पढ़ा था सब कुछ क्लोज करके लॉक करके वॉश कर दिया है ना. ब्रेन वॉश्ड. Very sad if you cannot remember the name of cranial nerves. Sit down. So frontal belly. Sit down. So frontal belly of the occipitofrontalis muscle. This is supplied by the temporal branches of the seventh cranial nerve. There are lot of nerves in the head and neck. You have to read them. You have to learn them. After that, the neuroanatomy will start. So it is all related to the nerves. So you have to remember them very nicely. Posterior belly of the occipitofrontalis muscle is supplied by the posterior auricular branch. Then what is the clinical importance of this third layer? What could be? If it is a section, sagittal section and coronal section. Can anybody explain me what is sagittal section and coronal? कैसे होता है sagittal? It divides into right and left halves, and coronal divides into anterior and posterior. Yeah, just wanted to know this because I am talking about the coronal plane. If the aponeurosis is lacerated in the coronal plane, so that is anterior and posterior. This injury will divide the aponeurosis into anterior and the posterior part. So if that laceration occurs in this aponeurosis, it will be holded by the two muscle bellies. The contraction of the frontal belly and occipital belly will cause the gaping wound, because both the muscles, anterior and the posterior side, they will contract. So one will stretch it to the anterior part and other will stretch it to the posterior part. So there will be a lot of gapping in this lacerated tissue if it occurs in the coronal plane of the glia aponeurotica. Then next, coming to the fourth and the fifth layer, the loose connective tissue layer. Though it has the loose connective tissue, but it is the danger layer. So this layer is of loose connective tissue which separates the third layer, that is aponeurotic layer, from the pericranium and facilitates the movement of the scalp proper over the calvaria. Calvaria is called, skull cap is called as calvaria. Now this layer also contains the emissory veins. So danger is because of these emissory veins. So what is the emissory vein? What are the diploic veins? So in the scalp injuries, there the separation in the layers can occur. So infection can easily spread. So if infection is spreading in this layer, it can take the infection to the intracranium, because these emissory veins, they are the connection between the extracranial venous system and the intracranial venous system. And if there is a trauma onto the trauma and there is a bleed in the scalp region, the blood vessels which bleed, the blood will not accumulate in the scalp, it will come around the eye. So if you can see this eye, you can see a blackening around this eye. So sometimes you have seen a person coming to the emergency with a black eye. So that black eye is because of the blow trauma, and this loose connective tissue layer is not adherent to any bone. So if it is not adherent, so it is in the this loose connective tissue layer will allow the blood to accumulate around the eye, because there is nowhere it is not bounded. This loose connective tissue layer is not bounded up to the frontal area. So all the blood will accumulate around the eye, and this condition is called as black eye. Next is caput succedaneum. So what is caput succedaneum? Caput, you can understand, it is again related to the skull cap. So during the delivery, if the fetal head, if there is a pressure onto the fetal head is applied, so there is the all the layers they come up from the loose connective tissue, and the pericranium, there is a space is created leading to a swelling over the head of the baby. So this condition is known as caput succedaneum. Though it is a non-fatal condition, just arises because of the vacuum that has been created over to the head of the fetus during the delivery. The next fifth layer is the pericranium, which is the periosteum. Okay, before coming to this arterial venous drainage, okay, let me first finish these emissory veins and the diploic veins. So emissory veins, we have discussed that these are the veins which are connecting the intracranial and the extracranial venous system. So these are valveless venous system, and they don't have the muscular tissue. So they don't have muscular tissue, only layer present over there is endothelium. So these are some important emissory veins that you will be studying during the this osteology of the skull. But the main are the parietal emissory veins and the mastoid emissory veins. So parietal emissory veins, they are passing through the parietal foramina onto the skull and communicates with the superior sagittal sinus. These are the dural venous sinuses of the intracranial system. So it will communicate with the superior sagittal sinus. And the mastoid emissory vein passing through the mastoid foramen will communicate with the sigmoid sinus. So these are the communication that can lead to the infection into the intracranial system. So why these system have been developed in the scalp region and the connection with the brain? To equalize the pressure, that is the intracranial venous pressure. So equalize the pressure, and there is formation of the connection just because to maintain the balance between the intracranium and the extracranium. Next are the diploic veins. So what are diploi? Diploi is the two layers of the skull. Outer table of the skull is there, inner table of the skull is there. So between that two tables lies a vein which is called as diploid veins. So this diploic veins, we can identify them here. These are the diploic veins which are present between the outer table of the skull and the inner table of the skull. While this one, if you see, this is the intracranial venous system and this one is the extracranial venous system. So there is a connection between these two. This is called as the emissory vein. So there is two system of veins that you will study in the skull, emissory veins and the diploic veins. Next, starting with the vasculature, that is the arterial supply and the venous drainage of the scalp. So this arterial supply is not only with the external carotid artery, it is also with the internal carotid artery. Though the internal carotid artery doesn't give branches extracranially, but it supplies the scalp region, so it has both internal carotid branches and the external carotid branches. So what are the names of these branches? So from the internal carotid artery, we have supratrochlear and supraorbital arteries. So if we can see in this image above the eyebrow, these are supraorbital arteries and supratrochlear arteries. So those who are talking, because of them I will not give attendance of this whole lecture to anybody. So please stop talking. You are just disturbing. And if you don't want to attend a class, you can write the roll number and get out of the class. Next, coming to the branches of the external carotid artery. So external carotid, internal carotid, they are both the branches from the common carotid artery. So external carotid artery, posterior auricular artery, occipital artery and superficial temporal artery. These are the names of branches which are supplying the scalp. So here we can easily see this is the superficial temporal artery, branch from the external carotid artery. Then this is going posteriorly. This is occipital artery, this one, and this is posterior auricular artery which is going behind the auricle. Next, coming to the venous drainage. So as there were supraorbital arteries, there are supraorbital veins. There's supraorbital, supratrochlear artery. Again, there is supratrochlear vein. So both these veins, supraorbital and supratrochlear veins, they drain into the facial vein, or by them joining of these two veins, they form a facial vein at the angle of the eye. Then the superficial temporal vein joins with the maxillary vein in the substance of the parotid gland and forms the retromandibular vein. Then posterior auricular vein, it joins the posterior division of the retromandibular vein to form the external jugular vein. I'm just reading it out, I'll show it. So here we can see the two veins, the supratrochlear and the supraorbital. So they are running onto the frontal bone. They are joining at the angle of the eye to form the facial vein. So you can see this facial vein which is running downwards. Then comes the superficial temporal vein which unites with the maxillary vein. So maxillary vein is here. This is the maxillary vein and this is the superficial temporal vein. If you can see, they are in the substance of the parotid gland and they join to form the retromandibular vein. In the next we will see that retromandibular vein will divide into the anterior division and the posterior division. So the two divisions, in one of the two divisions, that is the posterior division, will be joined by the posterior auricular vein to form the external jugular vein. So how the formation of external jugular vein occurs? First by the joining of the superficial temporal vein with the maxillary vein in the substance of the parotid gland. Then there is a division of the retromandibular vein into anterior division and the posterior division. Then this posterior division of the retromandibular vein is joined by the posterior auricular vein, which finally forms the external jugular vein. Then there is occipital vein also. So this occipital vein, this drains into the posterior triangle. So upper part of the posterior triangle has suboccipital venous plexus. So it drains into the suboccipital venous plexus and from there it drains into the vertebral vein. So vertebral vein traverses through the transverse foramina in the cervical vertebrae and drains into the internal jugular vein. So this is how it reaches the internal jugular vein. So there is both the formation of external and the internal jugular vein. This we have discussed, emissary veins, diploic veins that are lying in the two tables. Now next, coming to the innervation. So last two topics, that is innervation and lymphatics. So if we can see this picture, there is dotted division. This is the vertex. It is dividing it into anterior part and the posterior part. So this anterior part, anterior to the vertex, is supplied by one nerve and this posterior region is supplied by the other nerve. So this anterior to the vertex, it is supplied by the trigeminal nerve. So trigeminal nerve, if you don't know, it has got three divisions: V1, V2, V3. V1, V2, V3, or you can say first division of the fifth nerve, second division of the fifth nerve, and third division. So first division is ophthalmic division of the trigeminal nerve, next is maxillary division of the trigeminal nerve, and third is the mandibular division of the trigeminal nerve. So all these have been demarcated with the dotted lines. So this area, that is till the tip of the nose, this is supplied by the V1, that is ophthalmic division. Then in the middle, if you can see, it is crossing the zygomatic arch and coming to the angle of the mouth. So this region is supplied by the V2, that is maxillary division, and below it, anterior to the auricle, is supplied by the V3, that is the mandibular division. And the posterior region in this scalp is supplied by the branches of the cervical nerves. Where else we have studied about the cervical nerve? Brachial plexus. So the trigeminal nerve supplies anterior to the ears. So the nerves are supratrochlear nerve, supraorbital nerve, which are the branches from the V1, that is the ophthalmic nerve branch of the trigeminal nerve. So it supplies the anteromedial region of the forehead and supraorbital supplies the anterolateral part of the forehead and the vertex. So two branches, that is supratrochlear and supraorbital, they are supplying the region of the forehead along with the vertex. Next division, that is the maxillary division, that branch is zygomaticotemporal nerve. So it supplies the temple region. Next is auriculotemporal nerve. These are branches of the mandibular nerve, which is a branch of trigeminal nerve. It supplies the skin anteroposterior to the auricle. So all these branches, these are sensory in nature. Next, coming to the cervical nerves, which are lying posteriorly. So posterior to the ear is the cervical nerve. So if you can see, lesser occipital nerve, greater occipital nerve, greater auricular nerve, and third occipital nerve. They will supply the region that is lying posterior to the auricle. So cervical region behind the this vertex is supplied by the cervical nerve, in which the lesser occipital nerve is derived from the anterior division of the C2. So do you know what is anterior division, what is posterior division? Ventral and dorsal division of any nerve? Yes? How the brachial plexus are formed? By the ventral division of, ventral division किसका? C5 to T1. So C4 can be involved? Yes. So lesser occipital nerve derived from the anterior division or ventral division of C2, while the greater occipital nerve derived from the posterior division or the dorsal division of C2. So from both the C2, second cervical nerve, there is lesser occipital and the greater occipital nerve. Next is greater auricular nerve. Now here you have ventral division of both second cervical nerve and the third cervical nerve. So you will all have to remember these, कौन सा division कौन सी nerve form कर रहा है. Third occipital nerve by the dorsal ramus of the third cervical nerve. So this supplies the posterior region over here. So you can easily identify that this is the greater occipital nerve, this is the lesser occipital nerve over here. Next and the last that you can forget also, lymphatic drainage, but not in scalp. So you have to remember where these nodes, the lymphatic drainage is going anteriorly and posteriorly. So lymphatics in the occipital region, they drains into the deep cervical lymph nodes. From the posterior region, these occipital nodes, they will drain into the cervical nodes. Then the lymphatics, they have been divided into anterior and posterior part. Last row you have disturbed me throughout the class. तो तुम लोगों की तो absent पक्का मार्क होगी. तो अपने पेपर पे अटेंडेंस मार्क करके दे देना. So posterior to the vertex of the head, drain to the mastoid nodes. So mastoid nodes, they are lying onto the mastoid region, which is behind the auricle. Again, these lymph nodes, they are draining into the deep cervical lymph nodes. Next, anterior to the vertex, that is preauricular lymph nodes and the parotid lymph nodes. They are lying anterior to the ear. Next is the lymphatic drainage from the forehead. So from the forehead, it will go to the anterior region, that is the submandibular nodes, as well as to the submental nodes. So this is the lymphatic drainage, where you have to remember occipital nodes, mastoid nodes going to the deep cervical lymph nodes, while anteriorly they are reaching the submandibular lymph nodes. Right? So that's all in the lecture of the scalp.